Welcome back. We're joined by Colonel Grant Newsham, United States Marine Corps retired. Very, very important contributor to the work we do at the Center for Security Policy as one of our senior fellows. And Grant, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about an important new book. I'm hoping we're going to have a longer conversation with several of your co-authors about it shortly, here and perhaps in a webinar on Thursday. It is a study by you and other military officers and civilian defense officials, led by our colleague Dr. Stephen Bryan, another senior fellow of the center, that talk very concretely and specifically about what we need to be doing now to try to deter what China clearly is telegraphing it has in mind for the freedom loving people in a sovereign, independent nation, as far as I'm concerned at least, called Taiwan. Give us a quick course on what you all have come up with and why it's so vital that we take these steps now, not replicating the model of Ukraine, which is to try to get stuff to help them defend themselves once they've already been attacked.
Yeah, what the book gets across, I think, pretty very well is that you've got to get started to defend Taiwan immediately. It's not something you do when it looks like China's just about to launch the ships across the Taiwan Strait as about to attack, but you have to get going right now. And you have to establish the necessary command and control structures where you can conduct defense, but also you have to bring Taiwan into the mix. Taiwan has been ostracized for 40 plus years. And if you think you're going to defend Taiwan without Taiwan having a direct role in it and you having done the necessary preparations and training and exercises to be ready, that's not likely to succeed. We do point out that there's considerable resources the Americans have and their allies have, the Japanese, the Australians, and others, and Taiwan as well, and that this needs to be organized. It needs to be put in place immediately. And what this does is actually deter. This isn't the question of wanting to be able to get in after an attack happens to somehow bravely recover the situation, because that is costly, just might not succeed. But you use what you have now, you get it organized, and you get ready. But the book does lay out very nicely these ideas, and also as it does get across the considerable resources that we have in the region and that are available. Because there is a sense in some quarters that, well, there's nothing we can do. It's too close to China that we're going to lose. And there's been some war games that have apparently come to that conclusion. But a war game will give you all sorts of answers. And there's also a lot of war games. You never hear about the ones where we win or how we win. So
No,
we're
you
showing
don't
that
so much.
we do have a pretty good card to play here.
One key piece of it, though, it does seem to me, which is almost incredible, and that is that we have not done more to ensure an integration between our defense capabilities and those of Taiwan, whether it's at the operational level, whether it's the technical level, whether it's the just the communications even. These seem to be the sorts of steps that would be literally no brainers and that we should have taken long before this moment, but certainly shouldn't waste a further moment to put into place. No.
That's right. And it's really common sense that you would want to do this. If you're going to defend a place and they have a military, they have a government, it sort of helps if you talk to them, if you treat them like equals.
If you
So
can talk to them, especially
that's part of
just
the
the
problem.
physical communications programs.
40
Yeah.
years of isolation because first it was, well, we don't want Taiwan to attack China, as if
Mm.
that was ever going to happen. And then it was always, well, we don't want to get the Chinese mad, so we will give
Right.
the Taiwanese just what they need to survive, and we'll pretend they don't exist. And somehow this is going to lead to a good outcome. But we
Yeah.
need to get over this and get over it pretty fast.
You've written about this at Asia Times recently in connection with a recommendation from Shinzo Abe, the former Japanese prime minister, that we abandon what's been called a policy of strategic ambiguity. Give us a quick assessment of why it's long past time to get past that sort of effort to make unclear to the Chinese exactly what we would do in the event they struck Taiwan.
That's right. Well, we tend to see that this strategic ambiguity towards Taiwan, will we or won't we defend them? We think of that as a clever approach, and that's going to cause the other side to back off. But they may see it completely differently, which
Mm-hmm.
is shows that, well, you're not really all that committed, so maybe we will roll the dice. So it's been a huge mistake. At least in recent years. It may have had its day, but that day is long gone. The military sort of balance has changed to where China it exceeds us in some places. I think we still have it, the overall advantage, but the balance has changed. I think as important is changing the language. And of course, you do want to consult the Taiwanese about this and ask them what they want in terms of language. But more importantly, is to go about doing the practical military steps, the political steps, the economic steps that you need to take to bolster Taiwan's position. And if you do that, the other side will get the message. But without those concrete steps, that just changing the language from strategic ambiguity to strategic clarity, that will be less effective. And what I wrote in this article about Abe is that he's telling the Americans that they need to end this policy of strategic ambiguity. So I suggest that maybe the Japanese can go first, and that they also have to do some very practical things to improve their own defense capabilities. They haven't quite got around to those things yet. But it was welcome to hear him talking up the issue, and he is critical of Japan's own position and lack of sort of forward leaning
Yeah.
and sort of the lack of the practical concrete steps that Japan needs to take.
And again, this goes back to trying to deter an attack, not just contend with it once it's happened. And I appreciate your leadership on this point so much, Colonel. Let me ask you lastly about another piece that you had in the Epic Times about the importance of Okinawa to our posture in the region, and in particular to that deterrent posture, if you will, vis-a-vis China.
Mhm. Yeah, I wrote up a few ideas about Okinawa, which this is the 50th anniversary of its return from American control to Japan.
Mhm.
Uh, for many years, if not decades, Okinawa was this hugely contentious issue between the Americans and the Japanese. We focused on that almost exclusively to the point that we didn't think about maybe improving Japan's own defense capabilities and our abilities to work with them nearly as much as we should. Okinawa absorbed that much attention. So, what I point out is that Okinawa's location is just as valuable as it has ever been from a military operational perspective, but also having Americans there is a pretty clear sign of American commitment. It is potentially a deterrent that you have, and it makes it, I say, it makes it a lot easier to conduct a defense of Japan, Taiwan, and the region, and also to conduct humanitarian assistance, disaster relief exercises. So I thought Okinawa was being ignored too much, so I decided to pay a little attention to it.
Things do seem to have settled down a bit with respect to the Japanese community's resentment of the base. Is that the case, or very quickly, am I mistaken on that?
No, that is the case, and it's actually the if you look at Okinawa, it is just as complex as anywhere, and there's always been a huge amount of support for these bases, particularly when you get onto the outer islands, but even on Okinawa itself. But that isn't what the foreign media reports.
Yeah, funny how
Uh,
that works. We often get something distorted out of the foreign media, including our own, needless to say. Grant
that's
Newsham, I apologize. We are out of time. I'd like to talk a little bit more with you about that, but we'll do it on our next visit. And in the meantime, I thank you so much for the work that you do with us at the Center for Security Policy and your other contributions through these various outlets to our understanding of the challenges that we're facing in the Western Pacific, most especially, of course, from the Chinese Communist Party. Godspeed, my friend. We'll talk with you again very soon. Next up, we'll speak with Dr. Peter Vincent Pry about electromagnetic pulse, what it means for you.